The price of underestimation. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Their assessment teams had studied Earth for exactly 17 standard rotations before classifying it as a Level 3 civilization. Primitive, divided and ripe for integration into the Empire's vast domain. Commander Vex stood on the observation deck of the Imperial Majesty, watching the blue marble rotate slowly beneath them. His 4 arms crossed in contemplation as his assistant approached with the final report. The humans possessed nuclear weapons but remain fractured into competing nation-states, reported Sub-Commander Lyra. Their space capabilities are limited to their immediate solar system. No unified planetary government exists. Standard conquest protocols should suffice. Vex's crystalline eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Another easy addition to the Empire's collection. He authorized the deployment of Ambassador Kel Thorne, a seasoned diplomat who had successfully negotiated the surrender of 12 worlds without firing a single plasma burst. On Earth, the United Nations had assembled its finest minds to prepare for first contact. President Maria Rodriguez stood at the head of the welcoming committee, flanked by scientists, military advisors, and cultural experts. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading xenolinguist, clutched her tablet nervously as she reviewed the translation protocols one final time. The Zephyrian shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with deliberate slowness, a display of technological superiority meant to intimidate. Ambassador Thorne emerged from the craft, his 7-foot frame adorned in ceremonial armor that shifted colors like liquid mercury. Behind him marched a full honor guard, their plasma rifles held at attention. President Rodriguez stepped forward, extending her hand in the universal human gesture of peaceful greeting. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Thorne. We are honored by your presence and eager to establish." Thorne's face contorted in what humans would later recognize as disgust. The extended hand, in Zephyrian culture, was not a greeting but a gesture of submission, something only the conquered offered to their masters. That humans would use it as an opening gesture confirmed everything the Empire believed about this primitive species. President Rodriguez, Thorne interrupted, his translator rendering his words in perfect but condescending English. "The Zephyrian Empire has observed your world's development with interest. We offer you the opportunity to join our great civilization. Naturally, this will require certain adjustments to your current governance structure." Elena noticed something odd in the ambassador's speech patterns. The translator was accurate, but there were micro-pauses, subtle inflections that suggested the Zephyrian language contained concepts that didn't quite map to human understanding. "What kind of adjustments?" Rodriguez asked carefully, lowering her still extended hand. Thorne's armor shifted to deep crimson, a color Elena's cultural briefing identified as associated with authority and dominance. "Complete integration into our empire, dismantling of your military forces, installation of Zephyrian governors to oversee your transition to productive citizens. Your resources will be allocated according to imperial needs." General Marcus Chen, standing behind the president, felt his jaw tighten. He'd seen enough invasions in human history to recognize one when it was dressed up in diplomatic language. "And if we prefer to maintain our independence?" Rodriguez asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Thorne's armor darkened further. "That would be inadvisable. The Empire has never failed to integrate a species once contact has been established. Your cooperation merely determines whether the process is comfortable or educational." Within 24 hours, the Zephyrian fleet had moved from the edge of the solar system to Earth orbit. 300 warships, each one larger than humanity's most ambitious space stations, arranged themselves in perfect formation above major population centers. The United Nations convened an emergency session. Some nations argued for immediate surrender, pointing to the obvious technological superiority of the Zephyrians. Others, led by a coalition of newer democracies who had fought hard for their freedom, refused to bow to another empire's demands. Dr. Vasquez worked through the night, analyzing every word, every pause, every inflection in Ambassador Thorne's speech. She found patterns that others had missed, linguistic structures that revealed how Zephyrians thought, how they processed information, how they viewed conflict. They think in terms of inevitability, she explained to the Emergency Council. In their language, there's no real future tense for defeat when applied to themselves. They literally cannot conceive of losing once they've begun a conquest. General Chen leaned forward. That's a weakness. Overconfidence leads to blind spots. But their technology, someone protested. Technology isn't everything, Chen replied. Ask the British Empire about the American colonies. Ask the Soviet Union about Afghanistan. Ask any conqueror about the price of underestimating human stubbornness. The vote was close, but humanity chose resistance. Ambassador Thorne received Earth's response with visible shock. His armor flickered through several colors before settling on deep black, the color of war. You have made a grave error, President Rodriguez. The Empire offers one final chance. Surrender now, or face the consequences of your defiance. Rodriguez's reply became famous across the galaxy. Humanity has faced extinction before. We're still here. That should tell you something about consequences. The first Zephyrian assault came 12 hours later. Kinetic bombardment from orbit, targeting military installations with surgical precision. The Empire expected immediate capitulation. No species had ever continued resistance after such a display of power. They hadn't counted on humanity's peculiar relationship with adversity. Within minutes of the first strikes, human communication networks, both official and unofficial, lit up with activity. Military units scattered according to long-practiced protocols. Scientists shared data freely across former national boundaries. Citizens organized with surprising efficiency. In an underground bunker in Colorado, General Chen coordinated the initial response. They expect us to fight like them, in formation, following predictable patterns. Let's show them how humans really fight when our backs are against the wall. The first human counterstrike came from an unexpected source. A group of amateur astronomers in Chile, using a repurposed radio telescope, managed to jam Zephyrian communications in an entire sector for 13 minutes. It wasn't much, but it was enough for 3 squadrons of modified fighter jets to launch a coordinated attack on a Zephyrian supply vessel. The jets were destroyed, but not before inflicting minor damage. The first harm any species had managed to inflict on a Zephyrian ship in over a century. Commander Vex studied the battle reports with growing concern. How did they jam our communications? Their technology shouldn't be capable of interfacing with our systems. Sub-Commander Lyra pulled up the analysis. They used a principle we hadn't considered. They overloaded our receivers with broad-spectrum noise. It's crude, inefficient, and shouldn't have worked. But it did work, Vex noted. What else are we missing about these humans? Dr. Vasquez, now working with a team of linguists and code breakers, made a breakthrough. The Zephyrian computer systems, for all their advancement, used quantum encryption based on mathematical principles that human physicists had theorized but never implemented. Once they understood the pattern, adapting human systems to interface with Zephyrian technology became possible. Difficult, but possible. It's like finding out your enemy's unbreakable code is based on a puzzle you solved as a graduate student. She explained to General Chen. They never thought we'd understand it because they assumed we think like them. The war that the Zephyrian Empire expected to last days stretched into weeks. Human forces lost every direct engagement, but they learned from each defeat. They adapted tactics that seemed insane to Zephyrian military doctrine. Deliberately sacrificing assets to gather intelligence, using obsolete technology that Zephyrian sensors couldn't properly track, exploiting the very advantages that made the Empire overconfident. In the command center of the Imperial Majesty, Commander Vex received reports that defied everything he knew about warfare. Human forces appeared and disappeared like smoke. They struck at supply lines rather than engaging in honorable direct combat. They used their own civilian infrastructure as weapons. turning communication satellites into crude missiles, repurposing industrial facilities into weapons manufactories overnight. They're not fighting to win, Lyra observed with something approaching admiration. They're fighting to survive. And they're getting better at it every day. Vex's armor flickered uncertainly. Increase bombardment intensity. Target their population centers. Break their will. Sir, Lyra hesitated. That would violate Imperial protocols for integration. The damage to infrastructure. They've already violated our expectations. Vex snapped. Proceed with the order. But humanity had anticipated this escalation. Hidden bunkers, some dating back to the Cold War, provided shelter. Cities had been evacuated using plans originally designed for nuclear attack. The Zephyrians found themselves bombing empty buildings while humans watched from safety, broadcasting defiant messages across all frequencies. Ambassador Thorn requested another meeting. His armor, once brilliant and shifting, now remained a dull gray. Your resistance is illogical, he told President Rodriguez via secure communication. You cannot win. Why do you continue? Rodriguez, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, smiled grimly. You said it yourself, Ambassador. You've never failed to integrate a species. Maybe it's time you learned that never is just another word for not yet. As the first phase of the conflict drew to a close, both sides reassessed. The Zephyrian Empire had expected complete victory within days. Instead, they found themselves embroiled in the most challenging conflict in their 1,000-year history of expansion. Humanity had survived the initial onslaught, but at tremendous cost. Cities lay in ruins, millions were displaced, and their military forces were a fraction of their former strength. But they were still fighting, still adapting, still human. And in research facilities around the world, scientists and engineers worked feverishly on projects that would have seemed impossible just weeks before. They had learned something crucial from their brief exposure to Zephyrian technology. The Empire's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness. The Zephyrians' technology was perfect, too perfect, standardized across 1,000 worlds, unchanged for centuries because it had never needed to change. Humans, by contrast, had built their entire civilization on adaptation, improvisation, and making do with whatever was at hand. The tide was about to turn, though neither side knew it yet. Humanity was preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson about the dangers of underestimating a species that had clawed its way from the African savanna to the stars, not through superior technology, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to give up. The Empire had struck first. They would soon learn why that had been their greatest mistake. The warning shot heard across the galaxy. 3 months into what the Zephyrian Empire called the Earth Integration Conflict, Commander Vex stood before a holographic display showing casualty reports and resource expenditure that defied all military logic. The Empire had lost more ships and personnel attempting to subdue one primitive world than in their last 50 conquests combined. Explain this, Vex demanded, his armor cycling through frustrated purples and angry reds. Sub-Commander Lyra manipulated the display, highlighting zones of human resistance. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. When we adapt to their tactics, they completely change their approach. They seem to enjoy the challenge. In the ruins of Tokyo, General Marcus Chen coordinated with resistance cells across the globe through a patchwork network of quantum communicators, devices cobbled together from Zephyrian wreckage and human ingenuity. His command center, situated in an abandoned subway station, hummed with activity. Report from the Amazon cell, announced Captain Sophia Reyes. They've successfully modified captured Zephyrian hover technology. We now have 30 operational units capable of matching their scouts' maneuverability. Chen nodded, studying the tactical map. Distribute the modification specs to all cells. What's the status of the Jupiter operation? Dr. O'Brien's team is in position. They're about to attempt the capture. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a camouflaged human vessel drifted silently. Dr. Sarah O'Brien, formerly a theoretical physicist at MIT, now found herself leading one of humanity's most audacious operations. Her team had spent weeks studying Zephyrian patrol patterns, preparing for this moment. "Target approaching," whispered her tactical officer. "Zephyrian science vessel, lightly armed. They're conducting routine surveys of Jupiter's moons." O'Brien watched through the viewscreen as the elegant alien ship glided past, its sensors focused on the gas giant below. "Initiate the pulse." The device they'd constructed was humanity's first successful reverse engineering of Zephyrian technology, an electromagnetic pulse specifically tuned to their shield frequencies. It had taken 2 months of trial and error, countless failures, and a combined effort of Earth's brightest minds. The pulse erupted from their ship, invisible but devastating. The Zephyrian vessel's shields flickered and died, its engines sputtering. Before the crew could react, human boarding pods were already attaching to their hull. The fighting was brief but intense. Zephyrian warriors, accustomed to enemies who feared their superior technology, found themselves facing humans who had learned to exploit every weakness. Stun weapons designed for 3-dimensional combat, gravity manipulation used against beings who had never fought in variable gravity fields, and most importantly, unpredictability that confused opponents trained in rigid military doctrine. Within an hour, humanity had its prize, a fully functional Zephyrian research vessel, complete with its database and scientific equipment. Ambassador Thorne received news of the capture with disbelief. His armor turned completely black, a color no human had seen before. "Impossible," he stated flatly. "Primitive species cannot comprehend our technology." Yet the evidence was undeniable. Humans were not only comprehending Zephyrian technology, they were improving upon it. Dr. Elena Vasquez, working alongside O'Brien's team, made the crucial breakthrough. "Their technology is based on harmony," she explained during a secure conference with human leadership. "Every system resonates with every other system. It's beautiful, efficient, and incredibly vulnerable once you understand the base frequency." "Vulnerable how?" asked General Chen. O'Brien pulled up the schematics they'd extracted from the captured vessel. "Their entire fleet operates on synchronized quantum frequencies. If we can disrupt that synchronization, we can turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness," Chen finished. The breakthrough came at a critical time. The Zephyrian Empire, frustrated by months of unexpected resistance, had begun assembling a doomsday fleet, enough firepower to crack Earth like an egg. Commander Vex had received authorization for a final solution: complete planetary bombardment followed by terraforming. If humans wouldn't integrate willingly, their world would be remade for more cooperative species. But humanity had learned too much, adapted too quickly. In hidden facilities across Earth, engineers and scientists worked on what they called Project Resonance, a weapon that used the Zephyrians' own perfection against them. The device was elegantly simple in concept, fiendishly complex in execution. By generating a quantum field that interfered with the base frequency of Zephyrian technology, it could theoretically disable entire fleets. The problem was power. The energy required was enormous. "We have one shot," O'Brien explained to the assembled human leadership. "The device will burn out after a single use, and we need to be within range of their main fleet." President Rodriguez, her face bearing the weight of 3 months of war, made the decision. "Do it. If we're going down, we're taking their fleet with us." The final confrontation came as the Zephyrian Doomsday Fleet assembled in Earth orbit. 500 warships, each capable of devastating entire continents, formed up in perfect formation. On the bridge of the Imperial Majesty, Commander Vex prepared to give the order that would end human civilization. "Sir," Lyra reported, her voice tinged with something resembling regret, "all ships report ready. Bombardment will commence on your command." Vex hesitated. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never encountered a species like humans. They had turned certain defeat into a prolonged conflict, had somehow mastered technology they shouldn't understand, had fought with a creativity and adaptability that defied everything the Empire knew about warfare. "Commander," Lyra prompted. "Your orders." Before Vex could respond, every sensor on every Zephyrian ship detected an energy surge from Earth's surface. A modified cargo vessel, humanity's last functional spacecraft, rose from the ruins of Cape Canaveral. Aboard was Project Resonance and a volunteer crew who knew they wouldn't return. The ship climbed through the atmosphere, Zephyrian weapons locking onto it immediately. But the humans had learned one final lesson from their enemy: the power of unexpected action. As the first Zephyrian weapons fired, the cargo vessel detonated Project Resonance. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. A wave of quantum disruption spread through the Zephyrian fleet like ripples in a pond. Shields failed. Weapons systems went offline. Navigation computers crashed. The perfect synchronization that made Zephyrian technology so formidable shattered like glass. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrian Empire's fleet hung helpless in space. On every communication frequency in every language of Earth and translated into perfect Zephyrian, a single message broadcast: "This is our final warning. Leave our system now, or we will share the specifications of this weapon with every species you've conquered. Your empire ends here, today, unless you choose wisdom over pride." Commander Vex stood on his darkened bridge, emergency lighting casting strange shadows across his face. His armor had gone completely gray, the color of defeat. Around him, his mighty fleet drifted powerless, their crews struggling with manual controls they'd never needed to use. "How?" he asked Lyra, who was working to restore basic systems. "They learned, sir. Every battle, every defeat they learned. We showed them our strength, and they found our weakness." Ambassador Thorne's image appeared on the emergency communications screen. His armor, too, was gray. "Commander Vex, I've received responses from 17 conquered worlds. They're demanding to know if the humans' claim is true. If we've been defeated by a primitive species." Vex looked at the blue planet below, where the beings they'd dismissed as primitive had just revolutionized galactic warfare. "Order the retreat. All ships, all personnel. We leave this system immediately." "But sir," a junior officer protested, "the Empire has never retreated. We have never failed to integrate a species. The Empire," Vex said quietly, "has never encountered humans before." The withdrawal of the Zephyrian fleet took 3 days. Human forces, battered but unbroken, watched as their would-be conquerors limped away from Earth. The mighty warships that had arrived in perfect formation departed in disarray, their technology still struggling to recover from the resonance weapons effects. In the aftermath, as humanity began to rebuild, President Rodriguez addressed the United Nations, now truly united by their shared survival. "We didn't win through superior firepower or advanced technology. We won because we did what humans have always done. We adapted, we learned, and we refused to accept that defeat was inevitable." General Chen, standing beside her, added, "Let this be a message to any other empire that might look at Earth as an easy target. We don't start fights, but we finish them." The impact on the galaxy was profound. News of the Zephyrian Empire's first defeat spread rapidly. Conquered worlds began to stir with thoughts of resistance. The specifications for Project Resonance, true to humanity's word, were transmitted to every species under Zephyrian rule. Within a year, the empire that had ruled 1,000 worlds found itself facing 100 rebellions. The perfect order they had imposed for centuries crumbled as species after species realized that perfection could be a weakness, that adaptation could triumph over superiority. Earth became a symbol across the galaxy, not of military might, but of the power of refusing to accept the inevitable. Diplomatic missions arrived from dozens of worlds, all wanting to learn from the species that had done the impossible. Dr. Vasquez, now Earth's first xenological ambassador, often reflected on the irony. They came to integrate us into their empire. Instead, we integrated them into a new understanding of what strength really means. The Zephyrian Empire never fully recovered. Commander Vex, in his final report to the Imperial Council, wrote, "We believed our technology made us invincible. The humans taught us that invincibility is an illusion, and that the greatest strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to change, to adapt, to find victory in the face of certain defeat." Years later, when Earth had taken its place among the free worlds of the galaxy,